Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for dialing into this session by the outreach team for Glasgow Uni and the Fast Stream. This one is going to be about living as a civil servant with workplace adjustments. We are an employer which definitely prides ourselves on making sure our working environment and the way we work is suitable for everyone, no matter what grade you're at, no matter what your circumstances are. So this talk will dispel some of the myths and give you some insight into what it's like being a civil servant with workplace adjustments. So as a very, very quick intro for the three Fast Stream hosts, I'm Aman Halai. I'm currently at the Cabinet Office working on the Northern Ireland Protocol, so I'm in the policy coordination and parliamentary outreach stuff, I guess. Zahid, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Jo McGowan. I'm Head of Profession for Economics in the FCDO. Nice to be here today.
Hi everyone, I'm Zahir. Sorry, I was just trying to unmute myself there. Issues with modern day technology. I'm currently a second-year fast streamer at the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, currently filling a role as a service manager for a big piece of chemical regulation that was put into place after we left the European Union.
Hi, my name's Faith. I'm also a second-year journalist fast streamer. I'm currently working as a business manager in the Department of International Trade in the analysis group. So to provide a brief summary of my role, it incorporates a bit of HR and a bit of finance.
Sarah?
Sorry, yep, trying to get myself off mute. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I also am based in the Department for International Trade at the moment. I'm a third-year fast streamer and I'm in the commercial profession, so I'm a commercial manager.
Amazing. Cool. So the way the session is going to run is we're going to have our two lovely guests. We're entirely thankful for volunteering to do this, chat about their experience. So first we'll go with Sarah and then we'll go with Joanna. After that, we'll have a bit of a Q&A session. So if you could stick your Q&As into the Q&A bit of Zoom rather than the chat function, that would be super helpful for us. And yeah, don't hold back on any questions or anything like that. And then afterwards, there'll be an opportunity to provide feedback using a QR code, so you can grab your phone and scan it, but we'll give you instructions when the time comes. So without further ado, Sarah, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. I've got a little bit of feedback, so if anybody can't hear me at any point, please do just yell out and let me know. Also, if my eyes dart across the screen, I'll get to white if that's where I'm looking, if it looks a little bit odd at any point. So yeah, as I said, I'm Sarah. I'm a commercial professional, currently working in DI. My responsibilities there are leading on commercially establishing a new arm's length body. So in short, making sure that they have all the agreements in place and know how to operate as an independent entity. And I also oversee most procurement activity for another ministerial department that we provide services to. For the last 6 months or so, I've done the majority of this from my bed. Again, for reasons that I'll get to in a moment, but this has been a little bit of my life since I left school. I'm a Glasgow grad, and when I was in my first year, many months ago, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is a type of inflammatory bowel disease. So complete a degree or any kind of study remotely because I had to do so for about 3 years. Again, for reasons. So there are a lot of online resources available, and I was certainly the only person in my year to do so at the time. So I was in place to support it as such, but it was probably the time when I first had the equivalent of workplace adjustments. When I was in the law school and what they recently developed all that to what I now have in place as a civil servant. So yeah, as I say, I've studied law. The law school was phenomenally supportive at the time, and I eventually graduated. But before I did so, Equality Act, specifically looking at the statutory protections that it affords in terms of workplace adjustments for those directly affected by disability in particular. So that people, but also equally extending to those with caring responsibilities. So it's something that I've taken an active interest in for quite a long time before I joined the service in 2018. As awful as the pandemic has been in an awful lot of ways, what we experienced shift practically overnight towards recognitions. I'll caveat that by saying that it certainly doesn't apply to every role, but within the civil service, tens of thousands of us haven't set foot in office since last March. And personally speaking, I'm more productive than ever. So pre-pandemic times, my workplace adjustment in relation to my crew primarily at that point in a previous department, a week minimum, but in reality, it was usually more than that. If I woke up one morning and after the intern before I joined the consultant, it made an awful lot of sense for me to do that at home rather than go through an office environment. And I was really fortunate to have managers that understood that and supported me in making anything that I needed possible to get the job done. So if I'd had to physically attend every single day, pretty much I wasn't recognizing what many of us upload and then some. The fast stream is a challenging experience. And there's with my disability, that's something that I just live with. And I think I had concerns back at my time at Glasgow if I'd ever be able to be in this kind of position, but I can absolutely assure you that within this, I'll caveat that by saying that since last March, compared to my Crohn's primarily at that point. I think what we're going to benefit from in the future. So if anyone supported me, I've done. So if I had to keep my workload and then some, the fast stream within a relatively short space of time, probably to get work. I had concerns back at being able to sit in an office 9 to 5, 5 days a week for whatever the reason your workplace adjustments are for, to fulfill the responsibility of an awful lot of roles. And they're really fulfilling roles too. The civil service has a wide variety, and there's an awful lot that you can do despite other challenges that you're facing in your life. There's no prescriptive list of workplace adjustments, and I think that's something the civil service was the preconceptions that other people might have, but actually I found that the biggest barrier was my own preconceptions about how I'd be treated and what would be possible. So, for you as individuals, if you have anything that you think might be considered a workplace adjustment, within the civil service, they don't just need to be what the university has agreed to or what you previously thought possible. I think reasonable is littered throughout legislation, including, and it has a highly subject meaning. So very much a case of bringing your own experiences to the table and collaboratively, figuring out what works for you. With your managers and with the wider fast stream, occupational health, all that jazz, and coming to a conclusion of what works for you, from furniture to make it easier for me to sit. The ways in which my Crohn's affects me is beyond bowel issues. To my wider life and from a business perspective as well. So coming from the commercial profession, that's how I approach an awful lot. Does it make sense from a value perspective as well as right for the individual? But actually, what I found is that, even though it might be a little bit of an investment from the business side of things to put those things in place for me, it allows me to do my job, which gives back tenfold. So it makes sense from all angles, really. And I've felt supported throughout with when I need to get the job done. In my experience, at least, there's an awful lot of trust. I won't say that it's all been plain sailing. I did have a manager on, thankfully only for a brief amount, and finding things that I, to apply to my life rather than things that were necessary to allow me to do my job. But the vast majority of people have really supported, and I think that's definitely the direction that we're moving in. So I mentioned my IB earlier, and that was the reason for the bulk of my workplace adjustments. until last summer, where after months of shielding, liked it was necessary to allow me to do my job. I really earlier for a very brief social distance appointment, and a few days later tested positive for COVID. A month after that, I was able to return to work. I imagined that if it was a case of me having to go into an office and perform in more of a traditional way, without those adjustments, without that understanding, without the assistive technology and everything else that I've been granted, it would have been impossible for me to continue my role. But as it is, for about 6 months now, I've been able to get back into the swing of things as a third-year fast streamer and deliver some high-profile, important government priorities. So what it looked like for me returning to work, especially for the first few months, was propping myself up on a load of pillows in a darkened room because of the light sensitivity and things throwing me off my balance. Because of life wasn't already interesting enough. I now have long COVID, and I don't know how long that will impact me for, if that's something that will continue in my life. But I know that if it does, it's a challenge that I'll have great support for in the civil service. And hopefully it won't prevent me from progressing in my career and in the roles that I want to pursue. That's my story.
Thanks, Sarah. You were breaking up a little bit there. You were breaking up a little bit, but I got the main gist of what you were saying. So thank you very much for that. Joanna, do you want to now go? And just a note for all the attendees, we'll come to questions and answers at the end. So do by all means do stick them in to the Q&A function.
Do you want to take the slides down so people can see my face rather than the slide? Would that be more engaging, I think?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. I think I could see both, but I mean, I'm happy to stop the slides. I mean, I think everybody's aware of who you are, so.
Yeah. Great, thanks. Hi, everyone. So I'm Jo McGowan. I'm Head of Profession for Economics at the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. I previously worked for DFID for 20 years. I've been in the civil service for a long time. I think the reason I'm here is not because I'm dealing with a disability directly myself, but I care for my 2 disabled sons. And so my work needs to fit in with their needs. And secondly, as head of profession, I support all the economists in FCDO, including those with disabilities. So I've shared some of their journeys in terms of the need for workplace adjustments. And I'm just really moved by Sarah's story. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing so openly your story and to talk about it with such sort of positivity. I'm really sort of moved and impressed, and it's really, really good for me to hear your story today. Just a very quick career overview. So I joined DFID in 1999 as a fast stream economist, having worked in overseas posts in Uganda, India, South Africa, and Montserrat in the Caribbean. So a variety of sort of NGO posts and a fellowship with the Overseas Development Institute in Montserrat. So I knew that sort of development space is where I wanted to work. I started as a fast stream economist working on the occupied Palestinian territories, Iraq and Yemen, and was involved in the aid program there for the first year. I worked full time at that point in our offices in London. I then moved to our office in East Kilbride, just outside Glasgow, which is called Abercrombie House, and that's been my base office ever since. I worked on evaluation, so looking at the evaluation of development spending. I then spent 2 years in Dhaka as lead economic advisor for the DFID aid program to Bangladesh, and that had a range of duties there in terms of designing new programs, working with international financial institutions, funding at NGOs, and a whole range of poverty-related work. I then came back and had a daughter and had a maternity leave, then went back into DFID part-time, 4 days a week, working on research, so thinking about development-related research. I then had twin boys in December 2005, and that's when the story starts to change for me. Firstly, I took a career break. So I had 3 years out of work where I cared for 3 very young children. I had 3 under 2, which I wouldn't recommend for any sane person, but it's how we found ourselves, and we know we're very blessed to have them. Over those 3 years, it became clear that my sons were not developing as in a linear way. And by the end of that period, we knew they had significant developmental delay, and they were subsequently diagnosed with autism. So I then got a specialist nursery place for them just for 16 hours a week, and was wanting to return to work on time at the end of my career break, but needed to work very, very part-time and mostly at home. And I had a really great hearing from our HR at the time, and forever grateful for that, who said, there aren't any artificial barriers here in terms of your return. You need to look for a role and compete for one, and make the case that you can make a contribution in 16 hours a week, which is what I then went out to do. I was fortunate that someone within the recruiting team had worked with me before and had a good sense and a right sense that I could make a contribution even if my hours were more limited than was usual. And I've worked part-time ever since. I gradually upped my hours as my sons went to school, from 16 to 20 to 23, working in the research team. I then joined the Chief Economist's team in what was DFID, leading on a whole range of analysis and work on developing countries, and then competed for a promoted post and became head of profession. So I've had a really interesting career. I think what's important for me is I work mostly at home because I need to be here when school finishes, because after school care for disabled children is very limited, even though the quality can be very, very good. We do use it 1 day a week. I also needed that understanding that when you're dealing with disability, it's very unpredictable, and you can have a week that gets totally derailed by something that happens at school or something that happens at home. And there needs to be some space to deal with that sometimes. There's also, disabled children are over-reviewed, really, in every aspect of their life. So my part-time pattern is partly about always having space for all those additional elements of being the parent of a disabled child. It's been a very rich life and a very rich career. I feel I've been able to maintain a level of ambition. I've been able to have a career with real meaning and be the parent that I want to be. And that's the story that I wanted to tell. In terms of my role of head of profession, one particular case I worked with is a colleague who had a visual impairment. And there was a whole range of software tech issues that we could work through to enable that working. So, for example, screens that are really large and magnify the text can really assist. And so there's a whole range of sort of hardware things that the civil service can support you with. But it was also important for that colleague and I to talk about the sort of softer side. So, for example, to communicate to the team that giving out an email you've just printed at the meeting itself meant that my colleague couldn't read it. But having the nous and the sensitivity to send it half an hour before so that he could either review it on screen or print it in large print meant that he could engage. And it was just those small adjustments. And we talked a lot about not ever apologising for that. This is about enabling every member of staff to be fully effective. And that's something that everyone should expect and everyone should have facilitated for them. And we also talked about sort of fully owning who we are, whoever we are, and that we should be valued at work for our full selves. And that was something we talked a lot about. And that's certainly something that I want to share with my own sons, that they fully own who they are. So I'll probably stop there because I think the questions could be quite wide-ranging, but I hope that's been helpful. So back to you guys.
Thank you very much, Joanna. I can't get the Q&A panel open, so I'm wondering if one of the other fast streamers could actually do that for me. You'll fast learn if anybody comes to work civil service. We're a great workforce, but our IT sometimes doesn't want to cooperate with us.
I'm able to read the question, so if you guys want to send across any questions you have, please do. So first, the question is, how have reasonable adjustments in the office environment translated into home working? I'm not sure if Sarah can answer that question.
Hello, sorry, if my mic cuts out again, please do let me know. Yeah, my Wi-Fi's letting me down awfully today. So yes, how it's translated to the home environment, pretty well, to be honest. I think it's been a great leveler in a lot of ways. In my experience, there were a lot of changes that happened in a relatively short period of time. So from my perspective, flexibility in working hours is something that is translated very well, in that a lot of people have, you know, more responsibilities that they've had to take on in the past year, especially. So it's maybe opened people's eyes a little bit more previously to you know, some of the possibilities, really. So I think if I need to have a break during the day, if I want to work, you know, late at night, early in the morning, things that work for me, that's worked pretty well. You know, we've been able to, in my department certainly at least, order, you know, assistive kit to help us in that capacity. So desks and chairs and anything of that nature, and also new occupational health assessments to make sure that, you know, we have the support that we need. So from that perspective, I think it's been good and a positive step, and I'm hopeful that it's something that we'll take into the future as well. But yeah, on the whole, my experience has been very positive.
So the next question is, can I apply for arrangements for any of the civil service grad schemes? The answer to that is yes. Keep it simple. Do we have any? I think there's another question. No.
Can I add to that, Faith? I think it's just about that confidently asking, you know, just having a strong expectation that arrangements can be made and should be made. I think that's really important. And just in terms of working from home, I think what I'm really hopeful about is that we can build from this platform where a pandemic has forced a seismic change for everybody. But there is so much, I know that's been challenging for many staff, but there's also been lots of good in it. And I will be working tirelessly to be able to build from all that's good. You know, I will be heartbroken if there's any sense of business as usual and within, you know, 12 months everyone's going into the office 5 days a week. That won't happen. But you know, that's not where we want to be. What we want is a conversation about how staff work best, how there can be more efficiency. These are efficiency arguments, and that's what I'll be making in my own workplace and elsewhere. So, and I'm really optimistic that we've got a new dawn, really, not only on workplace adjustments, just generally about every person being empowered to approach their work, you know, in ways that works for them. That's what I'm really hopeful about and excited about.
Next question is, what sort of support networks are in place? Are there any places to discuss things that would affect others by similar issues? Not sure if any of you can answer that. I think Sarah was going in. Sorry if I interrupt.
So various networks. I'll start with the fast stream because that was my introduction to it, really, and it's sort of gone on from there. But there are various networks within the fast stream for people to, you know, share information, resources, and just experiences within a safe space. So for various protective characteristics, but also, you know, beyond that, for people who might require a workplace adjustment in some way, and sort of more intersectionality than we've experienced before, I think, as well. We've seen a little bit of an improvement in that. The wider civil service, I think, is probably where I've been involved more holistically. So being in the commercial function, I'm part of the cross-government commercial function working group on disability. And we sort of develop policies in that area, initiatives, information campaigns, commission research, and that kind of thing to figure out what's going on and what we can better do to support our staff. But again, as we say, it's also serves as a safe space to share information and find people who are going through similar things. And then on a departmental level, so within DIT, our commercial team, and I know other teams have similar things, we have a diversity and inclusion working group. to work on that broader level too, and to make sure that people are supported. We have wellbeing champions who can provide more generic advice and support, but also to raise more general awareness and an understanding of the importance of diversity and inclusivity. So there's lots of different pockets of work going on, and I think we're hopefully, fingers crossed, moving towards a more joined up approach to that too.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Just to build on that, I mean, really good, strong networks in FCDO and across government, I agree, and more linking together and seeing, you know, again, our whole selves at work and all the different aspects that we need. I'm also part of a Parents of Children with Disabilities network that was set up in DFID, now FCDO, a few years ago, and I found that incredibly useful because there's a level of shared understanding, and we've been able to support each other, but also really feed into policy around you know, a whole range of areas of flexible working, for example, or we're an international organisation, so people work overseas in FCDO, thinking about what additional things might need to be considered by the organisation if the staff member and their family are moving together, what extra things are needed. So it's good for sort of advocacy and influencing policy. I'm also a fairness champion, so I'm a first port of call on bullying, harassment and discrimination. And that's all part of building a truly inclusive culture. And I think that will be always, it's always going to need more work. And I'm a real advocate for that. And as many colleagues are, I find there's some great fresh ideas from some of our earliest career staff on many diversity and inclusion issues. And I'm doing a lot of listening to them at the moment.
Thank you for your answer. We have another question. So how hard is it to carry out an important or fast-paced role if you don't know how well you might be on any given day?
I'm trying to think about how I do that currently, because so the work that I'm focusing on at the moment, it's primarily just me. And I would say in other roles, to really the importance of communication with your team, you know, for people to be able to drop in and help out if you're in that capacity, because actually it might be for, you know, a completely unrelated reason that you might do the same for them on any given day. So I think really fostering a really strong team culture and relying on people who can step in that respect, because I think myself, I'm thinking back to starting out and how I viewed that in a way as a little bit of a weakness on my part, but actually I don't think it's the case at all. Everybody has, you know, complexities in their life, and if people can step in and assist in that way to help you, then that's probably the best approach to take. But actually, as I say, the role that I'm in right now, it is primarily just me. So I think it's a case of focusing on your own well-being as much as possible, cutting yourself some slack and focusing on what's really important and high priority. I think I'll probably speak for quite a lot of us in saying that often in the civil service things move very fast or very slow and not a lot of in between. And, you know, taking advantage of when things are a little bit slower paced to plan for that, and being fairly, you know, ruthless with what really needs to be done and what can wait a little bit longer. Maybe managing expectations and relationships as well. All of those kind of tools and techniques that you may well have picked up in your wider life, you know, in dealing with whatever challenges that you face, and applying that within the workplace. But I'd say that, yeah, the work that I've been focusing on is very EU exit related, fairly high priority, and in the media quite a lot too. And I've been able to fulfill that without any major challenges, despite the issues that I've been facing too. So just taking advantage of the flexibility and the understanding of the team around you. In my experience, it's definitely possible.
I just want to share a story on that. So when my sons were about 3, they had really terrible chickenpox. They were really quite poorly, and I was just about to get on the sleeper train from Glasgow to travel to London to run a day-long workshop on social protection, on an area of DFID policy at the time. And as the evening got later, I realised I could not get on that train. I couldn't get on the train. I couldn't leave the boys. So I made that decision. I messaged my manager And I worked through in my head what things would have to happen, you know, without me, and what I could do remotely from Abercrombie House still. And I realised the big thing I was worried about was moving the chairs around in this room in Whitehall. That I knew that we had to sort of rearrange the room partway through the day. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Surely in my network, I have people who help move the chairs. So it's just like, it was fine to sort of contact people early morning, got all of that set up, led 2 sessions from Abercrombie House. So I was only away for half a day rather than being away for 24 hours and overnight. So that's just a fun story to say that was a really high profile day for me. But being a parent had to come first. And I've never regretted it. And I think that's quite an important sort of set of lessons there. And also, you know, we are in teams, we do have supportive colleagues, and I think just that sort of openness and building those relationships is just really important.
I'm going to very quickly add to what both Joanna and Sarah said. So I've got permission from my colleague to talk about this, but I've got one of my managers when I was at DFT, so not my media one. She had childcare responsibilities, and this is not, I've met her little one. Her little one's absolutely fantastic. And basically we had an issue where both me and manager went to go up to Birmingham. I was working with HS2 at the time. I meant to present to all these external stakeholders kind of, what our plans are and stuff like that. And I was woefully underprepared for it. And much like what Joanna mentioned, things had to be done remotely, and we had to really, really quickly put things into place. There's definitely a culture of getting things done in the civil service, and there's definitely a culture of building resilience. And that's kind of brought about by people being open. So I knew, like, about a couple of days before that this may happen, because my manager basically told me, look, this may happen. Can you prep to make sure that if I can't make it, we can sort something out. So as long as you're open about open as you can be, while still being comfortable with disclosing whatever information, it will really help in planning for all eventualities. And as an organization, we definitely had to respond to 1,000,001 different things happening all of a sudden at the same time. So it's kind of built into, I was going to say built into our DNA, but I'm not that institutionalized just yet. But it's definitely built into our kind of working patterns and how we kind of function. So yeah, it's if you are feeling ill, and there's definitely a focus now, especially on the fast stream, is that if you're not feeling up to it, do not force yourself to come into work. And especially with the pandemic, everything that's kind of gone on, there was a definite kind of, if you've been tested, if you've basically got the coronavirus and you are not up to working, do not try and work, because your own personal well-being should come well before any sort of work kind of engagement or anything like that, because ultimately you are the person who's going to be delivering whatever session or doing whatever. If you're not up to it, it's both going to impact what you can actually do, but also impact kind of your own well-being, is thinking, oh, I can't do this, I'm so ill, but I've got to soldier on and carry on, and that's kind of can be devastating. So yeah, definitely being open, definitely being kind of reactive, and definitely building resilience. It really does help with situations like that.
I will say, when I came back to work having had COVID, I fielded literally dozens of questions from people asking if I was really well enough to be back to work, even though I hadn't left my bed at the time. So the caring environment and people who were there on hand to offer support and to make sure that I wasn't overdoing it was really, really heartening. And yeah, a big reason why I enjoy going to work virtually every day.
Thank you for those answers. So we've got another question here. So is there a separate application process for people who require adjustments? What type of adjustments is possible to ask for in the application process? So if you wouldn't mind answering that, Sarah.
Yeah, so just thinking back, it's been a little while, but yeah, so when I first applied, I had extra time during the various fast stream assessments online, some of the questioning and that kind of thing. And when I got through to the assessment centre, I also had extra time at that point, a separate room and toilet breaks whenever I needed them. So they were very, very accommodating through that whole process. That was from my perspective. I know that there were people who were dyslexic, who also had extra time for that reason too. So they're very open to having the conversation with you and seeing what works. It might be something that they haven't necessarily come across before, but actually if that's something that will be useful through the process, please do speak up and have that conversation with them at the earliest opportunity, and they'll be more than willing to do what they can to accommodate it. The key word there is reasonable. And as I said before, it's very subjective. So the more you know about yourself and your own needs and what you think that you need in order to make that a level playing field, the better to share, because you're the expert on yourself. And then when it comes to starting in your role, I had a conversation. So I started around about the September time, and I think it was sort of January, February that I had those first conversations about what those workplace adjustments might look like. So for me, that also included a relocation restriction. And they were able to facilitate that as well, of course, in the days before, more remote working, but so that my placement was where I needed it to be. And then also just making sure that people were aware when I started my role, and that actually the role itself was suitable for me too. So all the way along, those conversations took place, and people were very open to hear from me, what would be useful. And of course, occupational health assessments as well. I had one of those before I started that was useful in making sure that I had the arrangements in place to do my job.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure if anyone has any additional questions, or we should put the feedback slide on, if you would be helpful to give us a bit of feedback on how you think the session went. But please do feel free to ask more questions if you have any.
Thank you, Faith. Yeah, I'm just trying to share the feedback slide, but again, technology has won this battle and it's not giving me the option. I'll just try again. Okay, it's there we go. Okay, yeah, so we'd be really grateful, as Faith mentioned, if attendees could scan the QR code just there. I'll zoom in to make it a bit more accessible, and give us some feedback on how we've done, and hopefully the information you provide can help shape future events. We've also got an email address that you can reach out to us by. We'll be happy, more than enough, to provide you with any further help or answer any questions that you do have. So feel free to reach out to us there. The email address is scotlandoutreach@gmail.com. And yeah, on behalf of everyone at the FAST Stream, thank you very much for attending. And to our speakers, thank you very much for offering your insights. I think I found it definitely very useful. And that's speaking as a civil servant. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Stay safe, everyone.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone.
Speak soon then. Bye.